I do think what the chief said is actually a really important point when we're talking about trying to make sure that those who sell and sell drugs and prey upon our communities go to prison, and those who use get a bridge to treatment, right? When we're talking about that first population, those cases are really hard to prove. And much like the behavioral health and the civil commitment world I talked about earlier, we have a lot of adverse case law and years of it that has made it really hard for us to establish that. I don't want to lose sight of what the chief said, and I'm just going to reiterate it. I prosecuted drug dealers for years as a prosecutor, and the way I used to do that is a possessor, a user would get arrested, and in order to avoid a felony charge, they would tell on, we call it rolling up, they would tell on their dealer. And then we would go to that dealer, and those really skilled investigative officers would then get that guy. So in order to avoid felony charges for that guy, he would tell on his dealer. And sometimes in a really successful investigation, we would roll that way 10 or 12 times until we finally got to the guy who was really bringing in pounds of methamphetamine into our community. Under ballot measure 110, which completely negated any crimes for users, but even 4002, those low-level offenses are barely misdemeanors now, which means the motivation for a user to cooperate with law enforcement is very low. In other words, they don't want to snitch. Again, using very law enforcement related terms here that I'm sure everybody watches Law and Order. So they don't want to snitch because the option is, you mean I could get a fine on a misdemeanor, which is the reality, or I could snitch and put myself in real physical danger, because that's not a good thing to do. So we have lost our leverage in these investigations, and they are really difficult for law enforcement.